The history of sports is littered with athletes who never panned out. Athletes who were promoted as potential franchise centerpieces, but who failed to live up to their expectations. And yet, even the worst of busts, even the most disappointing ones, rarely produce a moment that defines just how bad their career was. Most busts fade into the background and leave behind a career that, by definition, was uneventful. That is not the case, however, with Ruben Rivera, a 1990s baseball player whose MLB career was highlighted by not one, but two hugely embarrassing, infamous incidents that were criminal, one only figuratively, and one literally. Ruben Rivera was an enormous prospect for the New York Yankees. Scouts and writers and executives profusely stated that they thought he was going to be the next Mickey Mantle. He was a much bigger prospect, oddly enough, than his cousin, Mariano Rivera, who was on the Yankees when he was called up and who, unlike him, really did become one of the greatest players ever. Ruben Rivera not only never developed into a superstar, he was unambiguously awful. In his 9-year Major League Baseball career, Rivera hit just 64 home runs and batted .216. His most productive season came in 1999 when he hit 23 home runs in 147 games, but struck out so much that he produced only 48 runs batted in and a .195 batting average. In his autobiography, Mariano Rivera would attribute his cousin's failure in the big leagues to a lack of motivation. Mariano wrote, "Ruben is one of those young guys who just seem to be a little too taken with the fame and the adulation that come with being a gifted big league player. He parties a little too much, stays out too late, never quite shows the patience he needs to let his talent take hold. He wants to be a star yesterday. He wants it all, now, and when it doesn't happen on his timetable, he gets frustrated." In 1997, the Yankees, who were dismayed by Rivera's lack of discipline on and off the field, traded him to the Padres for another major prospect, Hideki Irabu, who was a phenom pitcher from Japan. Rivera was okay in his first stint with the Yankees, but he was bad in San Diego, where he was accused of not working hard enough to improve himself. But he was so talented, and he had so much potential, that the Padres gave him regular playing time for years. It wasn't until 2001 that they finally released him, and when they did, he was immediately signed by the Cincinnati Reds, who, too, hoped that they could mine gold from him. Once more, though, Rivera failed to live up to expectations. In 117 games in 2001, he hit 10 home runs and was waived after the season ended. By 2002, Rivera's career was on life support. At 28 years old, any dream of him becoming a star had evaporated, and it was then that he signed, for the second time in his career, with the New York Yankees on a 1-year, $1 million deal. Rivera was given an opportunity to make a roster that had been to 5 of the last 6 World Series and won 4 of them. He was now teammates with the likes of Derek Jeter, Roger Clemens, and, once again, his cousin, Mariano. It was as good a situation as he could possibly find himself in, and he squandered it in one of the most bizarre, spectacular manners imaginable. In the middle of spring training, the New York Yankees suddenly released Ruben Rivera because it had been discovered that Rivera had stolen a bat and glove from Derek Jeter's locker and had tried to sell it to a memorabilia dealer for $2,500. When the team found out about it, Rivera confessed and returned the stolen items. But what he had done was considered such a breach of etiquette that the Yankees bought out his contract for $200,000, meaning that Rivera's attempt to make $2,500 by stealing Jeter's gear had in fact cost him $800,000. It was a stunning lack of judgment. In the New York Post and other outlets, it was reported that Rivera had been beset with huge financial issues, which would seem to give a motive for why he did this. But when asked about it, Rivera claimed that he didn't know why he did it. Quote, "I made a rookie's error," he told a Panamanian TV station. I did it without thinking because it wasn't for the money. I had a good contract. It was just an instant when I wasn't thinking and I made a mistake that I'm paying for now. Still, Rivera conceded in interviews that he didn't get why he had to be released. Quote, I don't understand why Yankees GM Brian Cashman made a decision that was so hard on me. I have seen more big mistakes made by people in baseball, and they have another chance. Everyone makes mistakes. I haven't killed anybody. It was just a moment when I wasn't thinking right. I've repented. I gave it all back to him the next day. It wasn't correct what I was doing. It probably goes without saying, but had this been any other player with the same stats that he had and at the same age that he was, Rivera's career may have ended right here. That's how blasphemous stealing another teammate's belongings was seen as. But, once again, Rivera was such a highly touted prospect that the Texas Rangers signed him just 20 days later and gave him yet another chance to prove himself. And in 158 at-bats in 2002, Rivera hit 4 home runs, batted .209, and was let go from the Rangers exactly 1 day after the end of the regular season. Nonetheless, Rivera was still not without suitors, and in 2003, he signed a minor league deal with the San Francisco Giants and eventually made it back to the majors. It was, however, his last stint in the majors, and incredibly, it culminated in a moment, in a game, that was just as, if not more notorious, than him stealing a glove and bat from Derek Jeter. It involved Rivera running the bases, and it's one of the best highlights you will ever see from a baseball game.
Grissom to right center field. A long run for DeLucci, and he's dropped it! He dropped it! And now Rivera forgot to go to third, and everybody's safe. I don't believe it. Rivera's trying to score, and he is out at the plate.
So there is a lot about that play that stands out. For one, Rivera's base running was so bad that John Miller, the Giants radio announcer who was calling the game, instantly identified it as like the worst thing he'd ever seen.
Now he's heading home. The loose ball in the infield, and he's out by 5 feet at the plate. And that was the worst base running in the history of the game.
For another, the breakdown of this play is phenomenal. It starts with the Diamondbacks outfielder, David DeLucci, dropping the ball. Rivera was going to second, but he stops because he thinks the ball was caught. So he goes back to first, but realizes the ball wasn't caught. So he turns around to head to third, but he forgets to touch second base. So he retreats to touch it, and then, against his better judgment, decides to head to third, even though he's running very slowly. And the relay man not only already has the ball at this point, he is able to take his time to throw it because he knows he's not in a hurry. Look, Rivera was only halfway to third when the throw came in. He would have been out by a mile. He couldn't have even slid if he wanted to. Rivera made a staggeringly bad decision. But the ball gets booted, so Rivera winds up on third anyway. At this point, the Diamondbacks have committed 2 errors on this play. Rivera is unbelievably lucky to be there. And yet, he decides, screw it, I'm going to press my luck, and I'm going to try to score anyway, and he goes for it, and of course, he's out, and it's not even close. And you know what the most remarkable thing is about this play? It effectively ended Rivera's career in Major League Baseball. He never got another at-bat after this, because only 1 week later, the Giants released him. And that was that. Rivera never made it back. He was the biggest hitting prospect on a Yankees roster that would later turn into a dynasty, and yet Ruben Rivera's MLB tenure ended away from them before he was even 30, and the only prominent highlights of that tenure were of him pawning Derek Jeter's equipment and failing to score on a dropped fly ball. It was, to put it mildly, not what people had expected of him. And you might think that Rivera was so bad as an MLB player, he was such a bust, that his baseball career as a whole would be unsalvageable, that he was such a disappointment and had such embarrassing incidents on his resume that there would be no way that he could redeem himself. But you would be wrong, because there's an amazing postscript to his stint in America. In 2004, at age 30, Rivera started playing professional baseball in Mexico, and it was there, at long last, that he flourished and became a genuine presence. He spent 16 years playing Mexican League Baseball, and when he finally stopped playing in 2019, he had recorded 313 home runs there and was 45 years old. In fact, when he retired, if you added together his minor league, major league, and Mexican League totals, he had amassed 504 career home runs over the course of 27 years. It's one of the more improbable turnarounds you'll find in sports, and it's a testament to how important a change of scenery can be. It is not, though, necessarily a testament to how much Ruben Rivera matured, because that is a matter of conjecture. In 2002, when it was reported that Rivera had stolen and tried to sell Derek Jeter's gear, Rivera admitted that he did it. He told players that he did it. He told reporters that he did it. He even once said, in 2002, "I admit my mistake, my responsibility. I have never denied it." And yet, in a final twist, as his Mexican League career was winding down, Ruben Rivera retracted that confession and claimed that the whole thing was a setup. He told Kevin Davidoff of the New York Post, "They made up all these stories and it's all bull. I didn't need a glove from Jeter. I didn't need a bat from him. If I asked Jeter for a bat, he wouldn't have given me one. He would have given me 5. Brian Cashman, he's the guy that didn't want me there." Rivera later told La Prensa, "They didn't want to pay me the money. I think that's why they invented that I stole a glove and a bat. If I wanted a glove, I would ask him and he would give it to me. It was an excuse. Later, I found out that they would have paid a collector to say that I had brought him the glove. My whole career was destroyed." That is one hell of an accusation, and it's fascinating either way. Either Ruben Rivera was sabotaged by the Yankees, and everyone in the locker room, all the players, all the coaches, even his own cousin were in on it, even though the Yankees had just signed him only a couple weeks earlier. Or Rivera did steal Jeter's equipment and did try to sell it and learned so few lessons from it that more than a decade after the fact, he decided to start lying about it. Regardless of what's true, it is a fittingly weird wrinkle to one of the strangest baseball resumes you'll ever find. Ruben Rivera was both a venerable athlete and an enormously underachieving one, who, despite his prowess in Mexico, is best remembered for thievery and for forgetting how to run to third base. But hey, if there's one thing you can say about Ruben Rivera, it's that unlike other MLB busts, he is memorable.